Hi, it's Nick Davies. Excuse me. Today I'm joined by Tracy Friend. Hello, Tracy.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us today. Today's video is about why you can't meditate your way out of grief. Now, we just need to be specific. What we're talking about today is traumatic grief, when grief becomes trauma. So, Tracy, firstly, just tell us a little bit about what you do, work-wise, and a little background about yourself.
So I did a degree in psychology, and then I got to the end of that and I started studying lots of different forms of personal development and spirituality. Initially, my path was more law of attraction, practicing it myself, using different techniques to change my thinking, to change how I feel. And then started working with other people. I formed the Law of Attraction Center. And then over time, I started doing a lot more intensive meditation, doing a lot of Vipassana meditation retreats. I did about 35. And then I had two awakenings in the space of a couple of months from the Theravada insight meditation perspective, awakening to the sense of realizing there's no separate self.
Brilliant. So, tell me a little bit about your story, grief. I don't want to put any words into your mouth, so you just kind of tell the story and how you kind of healed that.
So in 2000, a year after I'd qualified in psychology, my sister took her own life. And in a way, maybe that was a large inspiration for my whole journey, that things were very, very challenging at the time. What I'd learned during my degree, maybe if I hadn't done the degree in psychology, I would have thought that the answers were there. But I didn't really feel there were any answers there. I feel very grateful that I had a strong intuition that although I didn't know how to feel better, I thought there would be a way to feel better. And then started studying lots of different forms of personal development, spirituality. A lot of it didn't seem that effective. And then the law of attraction was the first system I came across that led to quite significant changes in how I felt, which was the main aim for me of doing practices. I was very disciplined doing it regularly. Did that for many years, still practice it now. But then I felt that it was changing things on the surface of my mind, but I felt that like there were a lot of unprocessed emotions that hadn't been healed on a deeper level. So that's when I started doing a lot more intensive meditation, doing the Vipassana meditation retreats. I didn't really know that awakening was a thing to begin with. I just started doing them because it felt like the right thing to do. It felt like life was getting easier. There was more space in my mind. I started doing it more and more intensively over the course of about 8 years or so. And that led up to the awakening. When the awakening happened, there was a dramatic before and after, suddenly a lot more spaciousness in my mind. It was like emotions were arising and they were much subtler than before. But what I noticed, as is often talked about in the pragmatic Dharma movement, is that the challenging emotions were still there. So they were much easier to deal with because there was much less attachment. I was knowing that ultimately they're not who I am. So there's less suffering, but they were still there. So at that point, then my desire really was for greater emotional healing, reading loads of books, listening to loads of different videos. It helped a bit, but I felt like the meditation hadn't touched the traumatic grief. And the things that I was studying helped a little, but didn't make that much difference.
Yeah. And we've known each other probably about 8 or 9 years now. I've been to three of your retreats, I believe.
Yeah,
And then we reconnected on your retreat in Trigonos, which is in Carnarvon. Is it Carnarvonshire in Wales?
Snowdonia.
Snowdonia.
Yeah.
And just let the audience know what kind of happened there.
So that was the Law of Attraction retreat that I was running, a 3 night, excuse me, 4 day retreat with different Law of Attraction techniques, meditation, some Qigong in nature. And so we're doing all the different practices together. I knew that Nick had a background in hypnotherapy, some sort of emotional work. I didn't know that much about it. And then the more that he said, and when he was speaking at the workshops, he didn't really sound like a workshop participant. A lot of the things that he was saying, I was listening and I was thinking there's a lot of truth in that. So I was interested in finding out more about his approach. And I hadn't really talked that much about my sister's passing event at events because I thought maybe it's not that relevant to what I'm teaching. And then I found myself opening up and sharing about that with Nick. Do you want to say something now about what you experienced when I shared?
Yeah, so it was the first time you told me that story, and I just found a real sense of needing to help you. So I offered to demonstrate Blast, and I remember you saying to me, because it was in the evening, it was in the free time and stuff, and we were just chatting. There was a couple of other people there, and you sort of said, "Oh, will I be okay afterwards to continue with my retreat?" Because you hadn't experienced Blast, and I gave you the guarantee that if you weren't okay, I would. Look after you for the weekend, knowing that you would be okay. So, what was your experience when we did the Blast session? How
Yeah, well, maybe I'll share before we did it what my thoughts were. That
yeah,
I
of
was
course.
thinking, I thought Nick's a genuinely lovely person, but I thought, there's a lot of people with techniques that are fairly good. I wasn't sure how good it would be because I'd tried so many different things before. And then I was also concerned, although he reassured me, I was thinking, well, I've had the experience before where I've done some deep emotional work and then I've needed quite a lot of time to integrate. So I was still anxious, but intuitively it felt like it was the right thing to go ahead. So Nick did his blast technique on me. And I guess initially I was trying to analyze, what were the parts that were working? How was it working? And then I just went with the process. And before he asked me, is it called the significant unit of disturbance, what that was out of 10? And then again afterwards. And I can't remember what it said. Was it 2 afterwards or something? It was certainly much
Yeah.
lower. Um, and then I was just thinking, I suddenly didn't know where the pain was. It was weird when I'd had that pain for 24 and a half years.
And it was in your kind of
It
upper.
was kind of just below the collarbone on the left hand side. So it was a very physical, very tight, burning pain, very unpleasant. I was
Hmm.
tensing against it. And it had changed over the years slightly. I mean, it was unbearable to begin with, and then I could live with it. And I'd kind of got to the place where I thought that's my work, really, developing the ability to make peace with it, to live with it. And then when he asked about the significant unit of disturbance after doing his technique, and it had gone down to a 2, and I could no longer locate it, I didn't know where it was. And
And
then since, sorry,
do you remember what it was at the beginning?
I think it was probably about a 7 or an 8.
Hmm. And roughly, do you remember how long it took us to get it down from that to a two in time?
I think I lost track of time as you were doing the technique, but was it roughly 15 to 20 minutes or something, the whole
Yeah.
process?
Yeah. And how is it now? It's been several months since we did the process. When you think about Sally, your sister now, how do you feel? And
I feel there's no trauma there now whatsoever. I can talk about her. Of course, I feel there's a natural sadness now
of
rather
course,
than
yeah.
a fear and an overwhelming grief. Previously, if I'd speak to her, I'd feel really upset, really emotional. It'd take time to center again. I just feel that's all gone.
Wow, what a wonderful story. And we're doing something in Sally's memory, aren't we, in August? I don't know if you want to mention that and if anyone's watching.
Yes, we're going to be doing an event at the Life Centre in London called Hunting and Healing Your Shadows, where you're going to be demonstrating your blast technique, and then we'll be doing some meditation as well. And you're going to give people a self-care protocol, aren't you,
Yeah,
to take away where they can
yeah,
do a similar practice. Is that correct on
yeah,
themselves?
yeah, exactly that. So if people want to get in contact with you, what's your websites and how would they contact you if they wanted to work with you?
So my personal website is liberatingtheheart.com. And then I'm also co-founder of the Law of Attraction Center. And that website is Law of Attraction Center, center ending re.com.
Brilliant. Tracy, thank you so much for sharing your story and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.